The cargo ramp hit the dock plate with a clang, and Ahsoka Tano stepped out into the smell of burnt fuel. Above level 313, 3 Republic gunships crossed the night sky toward the Jedi Temple, not away from it, toward it. The temple tower was lit with smoke. She pulled her hood low and fell in step behind a line of dock workers. Nobody spoke. Every public screen on the gate wall showed the Chancellor's face, repeating the same calm words. The Jedi had tried to take the Republic. The Jedi were traitors. Citizens should stay indoors. A worker beside her whispered that he had always liked the Jedi. His wife pulled his sleeve until he stopped. Ahsoka kept her eyes on the sky instead. 4 more gunships crossed, then 6. The traffic lanes had been ordered into one single stream, and the stream flowed to one place. She had seen that pattern once before, over a city under siege. This was not a response, this was a plan. At the edge of the temple plaza, the crowd thinned, and the real picture opened up. White armor stood in long, patient rows around the sacred square. Blast doors built to survive a war were closing from the inside, and the paint marks on the nearest shoulders made her stomach drop. The 501st, she knew those marks the way you know a friend's handwriting. These were Anakin's clones. If the 501st was here, then Anakin was here. Then the column parted, and she saw the commander. Black armor, a mask with no face, a red blade humming at his side. The air around him felt cold and familiar at the same time, like a song she had forgotten the words to. Her hand shook before she could stop it. She told herself it was fear. Some part of her already knew it was recognition. She ducked behind a dry fountain and forced her breath to slow. Think. The plaza had 3 gates, all manned. The sky lanes were watched. The underground rail was probably covered too. An army was walking into a home full of children, and the whole city had been told to watch the news and do nothing. A trooper's voice carried across the stone. No one leaves the square. A second voice asked a question she did not want answered. The officer's reply came flat and clear. The order says all of them, even the small ones. Ahsoka's fingers found the hilts under her cloak. 2 white blades. She could cut down 6 troopers, 7 with luck, and the 8th would be a child watching her die. Fighting here was not rescue. It was noise. She was not even a Jedi anymore. She had handed that title back in a hall much like this one, in front of faces that had looked so sure of themselves. Tonight the title did not matter. The children behind those doors had never voted on her trial. They had only ever waved at her from the training balcony. She backed away into the side streets. Near a shuttered stall, an old woman looked up and froze. "You're the Jedi girl from the victory parade." Ahsoka kept walking. "I'm nobody, Auntie." The woman's voice followed her, small and sharp. "Then why are you walking toward it?" Ahsoka did not answer. She passed a closed cafe with cups still steaming on the tables. She passed a service droid frozen mid-task, as if the whole street had agreed to pretend. And she remembered a story Anakin had told her years ago, about a drain gate near the south wall that the younglings used for sneaking out to buy sweet fruit. A gate too small for soldiers, too small for anyone except someone who had once been small herself. She moved block by block, keeping to the shadow of the great statues. At the south wall, half hidden by dead ivy, she found it. The old grate, rusted, sealed with a chain that had never been replaced, because nobody had ever imagined the temple would need to keep its own children in. She knelt and worked the chain with quiet hands. Behind her, the sound of the march changed. The drum of boots stopped. The silence was worse than any siren. Across the plaza, the black helmet stopped mid-step and turned, slowly, toward her exact street. The grate closed above her, and the march became a muffled drum. Ahsoka dropped into knee-deep black water, and the rust flakes fell around her like slow rain. Somewhere above, blasters cracked in short, disciplined bursts. The temple sounded like a house being emptied of its family. She moved through the service tunnel with one hand on the wall. She knew these walls. She had run these pipes as a Padawan, late for lessons, laughing with someone she would not let herself name tonight. The tunnel smelled of old grease and wet stone, and under that, faint and wrong, the smell of smoke from the upper halls. The tunnel opened into the lower garden court, and she stopped dead. A squad of troopers was herding a small group of younglings toward the service lift. The children walked in a tight, terrified line, robes too big, faces too still. One small boy tripped, and the officer said something about leaving the slow ones for the second sweep. The boy looked up at the shadows, and his face broke open with hope. "Ahsoka!" The name rang off the stone like a bell. 2 blasters swung toward her. She was moving before the first bolt burned the water. One white blade snapped on, deflected, cut. She grabbed the boy under his arm, and dropped with him into the drain mouth behind the fountain base. Bolts chewed the stone where her head had been. Then darkness, and the roar of water, and the boy's fast, shallow breathing against her shoulder. They slid down a maintenance chute and landed hard on a metal walkway, deep under the temple. The boy would not let go of her cloak. His name was Bren. He was 9. He talked the way frightened children talk, fast and sideways, and every third sentence was a piece of the night she did not have yet. The masters fell in the dining hall first. The doors locked themselves after. The older Padawans took the littlest ones down to the sealed vault. He had hidden in a bread bin because he was small, and then he had been pulled out by the neck like a tuka cat. "Did anyone hurt you?" she asked. "Not yet," he said, and meant it as a joke. She held him for 1 second before moving on. The sealed vault was an old medbay from the First War, hidden behind a cargo shelf. It opened to a code she still remembered, and inside she found them. A knight named Farron with a burned arm wrapped in a torn banner, a healer called Jorah with soot up to her elbows, and 2 Padawans guarding the door with training sabers. 14 younglings in all, sitting in rows like a class that had lost its teacher. "The console?" Ahsoka asked. Farron tilted his head toward the Holonet station. It was not broken, it was murdered. The casing was melted in a clean square, the core pulled and fried. Someone had killed it with a tool, calmly, before the first shot was fired. "Which means," Jorah said quietly, "they planned for us to call for help. They planned for the call to die first." Ahsoka felt the room's fear rise like water, and did something she had seen Anakin do 100 times. She made her voice bored. "Good, then we don't call, we walk. There is a service shaft from here to the North Tower, and the North Tower has a roof." It was Bren who finally opened his fist. In his small palm sat a trooper's datapad, snatched from a belt in the chaos. "I took it," he said, "so I could remember their faces." Ahsoka scrolled with a steady thumb. Page 1. The temple roster, name by name, each with a kill mark. She scrolled past the names she loved. She could not afford them tonight. Page 2 was shorter, a priority capture list, with timestamps in neat military type. 3 names. The first was a master she had never met. The second was a knight who had gone missing a month ago. The third was hers. She checked the timestamp twice. The list had been updated at 2100 hours. Her freighter had docked at 2314. Her name had been printed on the list 2 hours before her ship ever docked, which meant her coming was not luck, and someone had been waiting for her. "You saw the commander." Farron's voice was low, but the medbay heard every word. The Padawan on watch described the blade work from the vent. Fast entry, offhand finish. The saber held a half-inch high. "That is Skywalker's line. You know it is." "I know a style," Ahsoka said. "Styles can be copied." "Styles can be copied," Farron agreed. "Not the feel of it. The children say the air gets heavy near him. You tell me who that is." The healer Jorah stepped between them, hands still wrapped in burned salve. "Even if it is him, what then? You walk up there and say his old name, and he remembers, and everything is forgiven?" I watched the dining hall doors melt with masters behind them. The man in that mask gave the order. The 2 Padawans said nothing, which was its own answer. They wanted to believe. They were terrified of believing. Ahsoka looked down the row of younglings. Bren was asleep, sitting up, her cloak still around his shoulders. 14 children, 1 burned knight, 1 healer, 2 kids with training sabers, and her. "If I go up there," she said finally, "I come back a corpse, or I don't come back, and you all wait here for the second sweep. If I move you first, we all live 1 more hour. I choose the hour." Farron held her eyes for a long moment, then nodded once, the way soldiers do when they lose an argument and win a point. "Then give him a reason to slow down, if any part of him is still in there." She left them, sealing the shelf door behind her, and climbed 1 level, to the junction hall where the training corridors met the archive stairs. The walls here were scorched, but standing. She took a burned rod from the floor and carved it shoulder height, where a certain someone would look without thinking. 2 lines and a dot. The mark she used to scratch on the training door after every loss she ever took. The mark he had once copied onto the nose of his starfighter, just to make her laugh. If the mask was empty, the mark was harmless scratches. If Anakin was in there, the mark was a hand on his shoulder. She was finishing the dot when the temperature of the hall changed. It came up the stairs like weather. The torches did not flicker. The smoke hung still. But her skin knew, the way prey knows, that something was descending into the lower levels with patience, and that it had felt her the moment her blade ignited in the garden court. She pressed her back into a shadow alcove and did not breathe. Black armor passed the far archway, not marching. Walking, slow, like a man in his own house. 2 troopers followed at a distance, the way you follow something you do not fully trust. The mask turned slightly toward the junction hall, toward the fresh scratches on the wall, and held still for 3 long seconds. Then it moved on, down, toward the vault level she had just left. Ahsoka dropped down the maintenance ladder and ran. She burst into the medbay and started moving people immediately. No speeches, hands only. You, take his hand, Bren, on my back." They flowed into the service shaft in single file, the younglings silent with the special silence of children who have learned that noise has a price. She was the last one through the shelf door, and she turned to check the line one final time. Behind her, the wounded knight closed his hand around the small transmitter he had never told anyone about, and its answer light was already blinking. The comm relay smelled like melted copper and old dust. Ahsoka stripped the blue wire with her teeth and pressed it against the rusted terminal. Above them, the ceiling vibrated. The clones were sweeping the third floor, and their heavy boots sounded like rain on the stone. 14 younglings sat in a tight circle on the floor, watching her hands. Lyra, a small Twi'lek girl, kept pulling on her own Leku. "Are they coming down here?" she whispered. "Not if we move fast," Ahsoka said. She did not look up. She twisted the red wire around the grounding pin and slammed the heavy power switch. The console sparked, coughed out a cloud of gray smoke, and lit up with a dull green glow. The temple's main network was dead, but this old relay was hardwired into the Senate backup grid. It was a narrow channel, barely strong enough for a text ping, but it was all they had. She typed in a 12-digit cipher code. It was a frequency Bail Organa used for his private security detail, a backdoor he had shown her years ago when they were smuggling medical supplies past Republic blockades. The screen filled with white static. The sound of marching boots above grew louder. They were right over the ventilation shaft now. "Come on, Bail," she muttered. "Pick up." The static hissed. Then, a voice broke through, thin and distorted by the jamming field outside. "This is Senator Organa's secure line. State your business." "Bail, it's Ahsoka." The line went dead silent for 3 seconds. When the voice came back, the formal tone was gone. "Ahsoka? By the stars, we thought you were still on Mandalore. The reports say the temple is secure. They say the Jedi tried to assassinate the Chancellor." "The reports are a lie," Ahsoka said, keeping her voice flat. "The clones are executing everyone. Masters, Padawans, the younglings. I have 14 children in a basement relay room and I have 3 wounded adults. The main hangars are locked. I need a ship, Bail, right now." The static flared again. She could hear voices in the background on his end, the sound of a busy Senate office. "The airspace over the temple is completely locked down by the 501st, Bail said, his voice tight with stress. "Gunships are patrolling every lane, but I have a diplomatic frigate holding in the upper traffic lane near the Opera House. I can detach a small shuttle and fly it blind. The north roof is the only landing pad not covered by anti-air cannons." "How long?" Ahsoka asked. 40 minutes. Maybe less if I can bribe the traffic controllers." "Ahsoka, if you are not on that roof when the shuttle lands, I cannot circle back. They will shoot me out of the sky." "We will be there," she said. "Thank you, Bail." She reached to cut the connection, but her hand stopped. The green light on the console flickered and turned a bright, angry red. A progress bar appeared on the screen, filling up in less than a second. The system was not just sending the message out. It was pulling a response back in. The console screen flashed red, painting their exact floor coordinates onto the visor displays of every clone squad within a 10-minute march. The magnetic locks slammed down with a sound like a breaking bone. Ahsoka dropped the datapad and ran toward the end of the corridor. The heavy blast doors that led to the north roof turbolifts were sliding shut. She reached them just as the metal edges met in the middle, sealing with a deep, final clank. She slammed her fist against the control panel. Dead. She pulled her lightsaber hilt from her belt and ignited the white blade, intending to cut through the locking mechanism. The plasma hissed against the metal, but the door did not melt. The core was lined with cortosis ore, built to withstand a siege. "They lined the doors," Jorah said, walking up behind her. The healer was supporting Farron, whose burned arm was now wrapped in a bloody, soaked bandage. "This isn't a standard security lockdown. Someone in the central spire is controlling the doors manually." Ahsoka deactivated her blade. The silence in the hallway was heavy. The clones above them had stopped marching. The shooting had stopped. The entire temple felt like it was holding its breath. "He knows we are down here," Ahsoka said quietly. "And he isn't sending the troops to get us. He's sealing us in." Farron leaned against the wall, his face pale and sweating. "Why?" he wheezed. "If he has an army, why lock the doors and wait? Why not just flood the hall with gas?" "Because he wants us to feel the walls closing in," Ahsoka said. She looked down the long, dark corridor of the archive level. "He is playing with us." Jorah knelt to check Farron's bandage. As she moved his arm, a small black metal cylinder rolled out of his robe pocket and clattered onto the stone floor. It stopped right at Bren's feet. The 9-year-old boy picked it up. It was a military-grade tracker, the kind clone officers used to mark high-value targets for orbital strikes. The screen was lit up with a live feed of the temple's lower levels. A bright blue dot was blinking in the exact hallway where they were standing. Next to the dot was a text message, sent from this device to the 501st command channel just 2 minutes ago. "Target secured in archive wing." requesting containment. Bren looked up from the screen. His eyes, which had been wide with fear all night, suddenly went completely empty. He looked at Farron, the Jedi Knight who had taught him how to hold a training saber, the man who had carried him out of the dining hall fire. "You called them," Bren said. His voice did not shake. It was flat and cold. "You told them where we were hiding." Farron did not deny it. He looked at the floor. "They offered a pardon," he whispered. "They said if I gave them the fugitive, the children would be sent to a labor camp instead of the incinerator. I was trying to save you." Bren dropped the tracker onto the stone floor and stepped back, realizing the Jedi Knight he had worshipped his entire life had just sold them all for a promise that the Empire would never keep. The heavy bronze doors of the Jedi archives slid open, and the temperature in the room dropped. Ahsoka pushed the younglings behind a row of tall stone holobusts and stepped out into the center aisle. She did not ignite her blades. She just stood there, waiting. The black commander walked in. His heavy boots clicked against the polished floor, slow and steady. He did not look at the bookshelves. He did not look at the ancient scrolls. His mask was fixed entirely on her. The mechanical sound of his breathing filled the massive room, echoing off the high ceiling. He stopped 10 paces away. The red blade at his side was not lit. "You should have stayed away," his voice said. It was deep, filtered through the vocabulator, and completely stripped of the warmth she used to know. "I came back for the children," Ahsoka said. She kept her hands open, away from her weapons. "Let them walk to the north roof. They don't know anything. They haven't done anything. You can have me." The commander tilted his head slightly. "The Jedi are traitors to the Republic. The children will be processed according to the Chancellor's law." "Since when do you care about the Chancellor's law?" Ahsoka took one step forward. "Since when do you follow orders without arguing? You used to yell at the Council for hours. You used to break every rule they gave you if you thought it was wrong." The commander's hand moved toward his belt. "That man was weak. He was blind. He was my master," Ahsoka said. Her voice cracked just a little. She looked at the black mask, searching for the eyes she knew were behind it. "He was my friend, and I know you are in there." She stopped walking. She let her hands drop to her sides. She left herself completely open, entirely defenseless. "Anakin," she said. The name hung in the air. The commander froze. His hand stopped an inch from his lightsaber. The mechanical breathing seemed to catch in his chest. For one long, terrible second, the red blade did not ignite. The heavy armor shifted, just slightly, as if the man inside was taking a step back. The silence stretched so tight it felt like it might snap. Then, the archive doors hissed open behind him. 3 of the Chancellor's personal Red Guards stepped into the room, their captain raising a heavy blaster rifle and ordering the apprentice to step aside so they could finish the execution themselves. The Red Guards moved in a triangle, rifles raised, and the polished floor of the archives mirrored their crimson armor like still water. The captain did not look at Ahsoka. He looked at the black commander. "Apprentice," he said, in the flat tone of a man reading a list, "step aside. The Chancellor requires the prisoners dead and logged." For one long second, nobody moved. The order hung in the air between black armor and crimson plating like a pulled wire. Ahsoka watched the commander's gauntlet tighten at his side, and she did not wait to learn whose order would win. She kicked the base of the nearest holobust. The stone master fell across the triangle's line of fire, with a crash that echoed up the shelves. She grabbed Bren's arm and shoved the younglings toward the reading alcove. "Kel, Miri, the balcony door. Move." Rifles barked. Bolts burned holes through falling stone dust. One guard tracked the children with mechanical calm, and a red blade snapped into a bolt's path, knocking it into the ceiling. "The prisoners are mine," the commander said, his vocabulator flat. "You will not fire in the archives." The captain's helmet tilted 1 inch. It was not an argument a captain won, but it was an argument a captain remembered. Ahsoka did not stop to thank him. She herded the children up the spiral stair to the balcony level, the 2 Padawans counting heads behind her. When she looked back through the rail, the black armor was following at a walking pace, and the red triangle was following him. Nobody was running. The hunt had rules again, and rules bought her minutes. The balcony doors opened onto smoke and noise. The plaza below burned in neat, controlled fires, and the city beyond glittered like nothing was wrong. Lyra pressed her face to the rail and started to cry without sound. Ahsoka knelt and turned the girl's face to her chest. "Eyes on me," she said. "We are not done yet. You never were." The voice came from the balcony door. The commander stood there alone. The Red Guards waited below, giving their master his moment. Ahsoka stood slowly and put herself between him and the children. They were 10 paces apart, with a burned railing and a city on fire between them. "Let them go," she said. "Tell your master you checked the list and found nothing. You are very good at finding nothing." "The Jedi tried to destroy the Republic," he said. The words came out like a lesson repeated too many times. "The Republic is a man in a hood," Ahsoka said. "And you know his name." You taught me his name. She took one step closer. Anakin. The mask did not move, but the breathing changed. One breath, ragged and human, slipped through the vocabulator before the machine could smooth it away. His gauntlet rose halfway, not toward his blade, toward her, like a man reaching for a rail in a falling lift. Then boots on the stair. The captain's helmet crested the balcony door, his rifle still raised, his lens ring glowing a soft recording red. Ahsoka moved before the lens could fix on her face. She swept the children through the service hatch, slammed the bolt, and dropped the ladder. Through the thin metal she heard the captain's voice, careful and cold. Apprentice, the Chancellor will want to know why your blade stayed in its sheath. Far above the smoke, in a quiet room at the top of the tower, the Chancellor replayed the balcony feed a third time and paused it on the exact second his apprentice's hand reached out. The service hatch dropped them into a maintenance shaft that smelled of hot wiring, and every grate above them glowed orange through the dust. Ahsoka counted heads by touch in the dark. 14 younglings, 2 Padawans, Jorah, half-carrying Farron, Bran at her heel. Then the temple's speaker system crackled, and the whole shaft filled with a voice she had once trusted in another life. Palpatine spoke through every speaker, calm as a teacher. Citizens of the Republic, the Jedi have risen in armed rebellion. They have murdered their own masters and plotted the death of your Senate. Report their movements. Shelter no one in robes. The temple is no longer a holy place. It is a war zone. The broadcast repeated in 3 languages. Through the grates, Ahsoka heard the clone cordon change its rhythm. The patient sweep became a hard push. Blaster fire doubled. Somewhere above, a hangar door groaned open for gunships that had not been allowed inside before. The quiet containment was over. The Chancellor had just made the whole city his eyes. Farron is failing, Jorah whispered. The knight's burned arm had gone gray under the bandage, and his eyes kept sliding sideways toward the sound of the march. He needs a medpod, not a roof. I know, Ahsoka said. Hold him together for 20 more minutes. Kel came back from the forward grate with a captured guard's comlink in his fist, the one Miri had pulled off a red casualty in the archives. He pressed it into her hand. On the guard frequency, a clipped voice was reading orders. North roof is the extraction point. Shuttle inbound from the opera lane. Hold all fire until the pad is crowded. Then burn the pad and the lane. Ahsoka stared at the little speaker. The roof was not a rescue. It was a net. They knew Bail's plan because they had read the same comm relay she had used. Her call for help had been answered twice, once by a friend, once by the tower. She switched to the open civic band and sent one blind burst on Bail's cipher. Bail, the pad is a trap. If you land on my mark instead of the pad, can you hold the lane? Static. Then his voice, thinner now. Ahsoka, the South Tower's anti-air batteries wake at dawn bell. I have one pass. If I miss it, the frigate leaves without me and you. Then don't miss, she said. She cut the line and turned to the shaft ladder. The generator deck was 2 levels up, and from there the North Tower's outer gantry ran past the burned hangar wall to the roofline. It was a route no pilot would ever map. Too tight, too hot, too stupid. Perfect. New plan, she told the circle of small soot-streaked faces. We do not walk onto the roof, we go past it. We cross the gantry and board the ship from the tower's edge. Bren looked up at the orange grates. That's outside, he said. Yes, Ahsoka said. Outside is the only place they are not. Bail's shuttle dropped through the smoke for its one and only pass, and on the South Tower the anti-air batteries began their 90-second wake-up spin. The hangar generator tower stood 3 stories tall, its cooling fins glowing white, and Ahsoka jammed her saber through the control lock so the safety interlocks could not save it. Back, she told the children. Behind the turbine wall. Cover your ears. The plan was ugly and simple. Overload the cooling loop, blow the hangar's outer wall, and let 2,000 tons of smoke and steam pour into the cordon line. Smoke was the only cover left in a city that had just been ordered to watch. The generator screamed first, a rising whine that made the deck plates hum. Then the outer wall went out with a dull, chest-deep boom, and the night flooded in, full of fire and wind. The cordon's floodlights drowned in rolling gray. Ahsoka grabbed Bren's hand and pushed the first youngling through the torn metal. Go, gantry, single file, Kel, count them as they pass. They ran the burned hangar in a line of small shadows. Blaster fire answered from somewhere in the smoke, wild and high, clipping sparks off the ceiling. Then, at the rear guard position, Farron stopped walking. He leaned against the blast door frame and took the heavy blaster from Jorah's hands. The door needs a welder on this side, he said, in the calm voice of a man who has finished his accounting, and the children need someone to be slow. Farron, Jorah started. I sold them once, he said. He looked at Bren, then looked away. Let me buy once. He did not ask to be forgiven. He pulled the door lever, and the blast door began to fall. Through the shrinking gap, Ahsoka saw him sit down against it with the blaster across his knees, facing the smoke. The gantry was worse than the plan. Wind off the city edge pulled at their robes. Below them, the plaza's fires drew long orange streets between the towers. Lyra crossed with her eyes shut and her hands locked on Miri's belt. Halfway across, the smoke below parted, and the cordon's floodlights found the gantry like fingers. Then the strangest thing of the night happened. The floodlights went out. The clone cordon, mid-pursuit, pulled back on a coded order, boots reversing in perfect discipline, gunships lifting off the tower face. For 10 whole seconds the gantry stood in silence, and Ahsoka understood none of it. Palpatine did not pull back. Palpatine pushed forward. Unless the push had changed hands, the answer climbed out of the smoke on the far tower ledge. Crimson armor, 50 strong, repelling cables hissing, rifles already up. The Chancellor's own guards pulled off the balcony and sent ahead of the hunt, because the tower no longer trusted the apprentice to finish it. 50 of the Chancellor's red guards stood between the gantry and the roofline, and their captain raised 2 fingers and gave the order that meant no prisoners and no witnesses. The gantry swayed in the tower wind, and the 50 red rifles on the far ledge did not sway at all. Ahsoka pushed the younglings flat behind the turbine housing and counted the gap, 30 paces of open metal between her line and the roof edge where Bael's mark would glow. The captain raised 2 fingers again, then the ledge behind the red guards exploded inward. Black armor landed in the crimson line like a hammer dropped from the sky. A red blade ignited once, cut 2 rifle barrels clean, and went out. The commander stood between his master's guards and the gantry, his cape burning at one edge. "The test is not finished, Captain," he said. "Lower your rifles." The captain's helmet tilted. "The Chancellor's order is burn all." "The Chancellor's order," the commander said, "is mine to carry." 2 orders stood against each other on the roofline, and for 10 seconds the only sound was the wind and the far whine of an approaching shuttle. Ahsoka used those 10 seconds to understand what the captain said next, because he said it to her, not to the mask, in the tone of a man delivering a message he had been paid to enjoy. "You still think you chose to come back," the captain called over the wind. "Your freighter was flagged at the Mandalore gate 6 days ago. The Chancellor knew your course, your dock, your hour. He printed your name on the list before you ever touched this city. Tonight was never your rescue, fugitive. It was his examination of him." The captain nodded at the black armor. "You are the question. He is the answer they are grading." The truth landed harder than the explosion had. The list printed at 2100 hours. The murdered consul, the sealed doors, all of it had been a maze built for one rat, just to watch which wall the apprentice would move. Her whole night of choices had been watched like a lesson, and he had moved walls. Every time, quietly, deniably, for her. Above the South Tower, the anti-air batteries finished their spin and went silent, which meant they were listening for a target. The shuttle's engines rose out of the smoke on the opera lane, small and bright and impossibly slow. Ahsoka looked at the black mask holding the red line. She looked at the children behind her, 14 small faces streaked with soot. She had spent the whole night refusing to bet on the man inside that armor. There was no bet left except him. She stood up, walked to the gantry rail, and threw her glow charge onto the roof edge. The mark flared green. "Kel, Miri, hands on the child in front of you. Do not stop for anything. Do not stop for me." Ahsoka looked from the 50 rifles to the black mask and made the only bet she had left. She walked the first youngling into the gap the mask was holding open. The shuttle came in ugly, one wing low, Bael fighting the crosswind off the burning plaza. Its landing claws caught the roof edge 3 paces from the green mark, and the ramp dropped while the engines were still screaming. "Go, go, go." Ahsoka sent the line of children across, counting them by the shoulder as they passed her. 1, 4, 9. Lyra went up the ramp clutching Miri's belt. 12, 13. Bren stopped at the ramp and turned back for her, and she had to point at him with her whole arm before he climbed. The captain chose that second to stop obeying 2 masters. "Burn the shuttle," he said, quiet, and 5 rifles swung from the children to the ship. The red blade was already moving. It did not touch the men. It touched the rifles, the power cells, the captain's targeting scope, cutting steel with a surgeon's calm while the commander's body stayed exactly between the guards and the ship. "I said," the black armor growled, and the vocabulator let something ragged ride under the word, "They leave." The captain fell back 1 step and raised his fist for the ledge teams. Ahsoka was the last soul on the roof, and she did not climb. She stood at the ramp's edge with one hand on the rail and looked across the burning roof at the man who had been her friend, her general, her brother, in every way that mattered. "You can still walk away from him," she said. "The engines drowned half of it." She said it again. "Anakin, Padme is alive. She is in the Senate quarter, waiting for you to come home. Come home." The red blade stopped, not lowered, stopped, the way a heart stops. The mask tilted 1 inch down, and through the lens she saw nothing and felt everything. A man standing at the bottom of a deep well, looking up at a rope he had burned himself. One breath came through the vocabulator, unsmoothed, human, broken. The blade dipped for the length of that breath, and the ramp doors began to close. He did not stop them. He did not follow. He stood in the firelight with his blade hanging at his side while the ship lifted off the roof edge with Ahsoka's hand still on the rail. The anti-air batteries found the lane half a second later. Tracers stitched the smoke. The shuttle rolled, took a hit in the left engine, and fell toward the lower city in a spiral of gray and orange, with 14 younglings screaming and Bale's voice flat on the intercom, calling angles like a man reading his own eulogy. The shuttle fell into the smoke, with one engine screaming, and nobody aboard. Not Ahsoka, not the pilot, not the Emperor watching from his tower, knew if it would live to touch the ground. The shuttle hit a cargo platform in the lower city hard enough to crack its own keel, and then there was only the sound of cooling metal and small, careful breathing. Ahsoka walked the line in the dim cabin light, touching shoulders, counting out loud so the children could hear the number grow. 14 younglings, Kel, Miri, Jorah, Bale, pale at the controls, 19 souls who had walked into the burning of an order and come out the other side as a flock. Bren sat by the cracked viewport with his knees up. He had his youngling training saber in both hands, the little stick of plastic and metal he had carried all night without knowing why. Farron sold us, he said to the glass. The council is dead. The temple is burned. He looked up at her, 9 years old, asking the only question left. Was any of it real? Ahsoka sat down on the floor beside him, because some answers deserved to be given at eye level. You were real, she said. Lyra was real. The man who sat down at the door at the end was real. The order was never the building, Bren. It was the choice. Tonight, 19 people made it. She closed his fingers over the training saber. He did not let go. High above, in a quiet room at the top of the tower, a different choice was being weighed. Vader knelt on black stone, and the Emperor's voice circled him like slow water. The shuttle broke apart in the lane, Vader said. No survivors. The fugitive is Ash. The silence that followed was long enough to be a verdict. Then Palpatine smiled, the way a teacher smiles at a lesson learned wrong, and laid one thin hand on the black helmet. Then you will hunt her until she is Ash in truth, the Emperor said softly. A task I give only to those I trust. Do not make me doubt you again, my apprentice. The leash had a new length now, and a new direction. Somewhere in the lower city, a flock of 19 was already moving toward a senator's quiet ships. Somewhere in the tower, an apprentice was being sent to hunt the only person who knew his face, and who knew the name of the woman waiting for him to come home. The temple fell. The Empire rose. The history books would say the Jedi ended in one night. But histories are written by the winners, and the winners had just learned to lie. Vader rose from his knee with the hunt order in his fist, and for the first time since the mask closed over his face, the Emperor's leash felt less like a chain and more like a countdown. The Chancellor's private screen glowed blue in a room kept cold enough to feel like winter, and the new relay ping landed on it like a fly landing on milk. Palpatine did not lean forward. He let the coordinates paint themselves, let the little red circle breathe over the temple's lower levels, and folded his hands in his lap like a man at a recital. 6 days, he said to the quiet room. From the Mandalore gate to my doorstep. She flew exactly the course we drew for her. Behind him, 50 crimson helmets stood in 4 perfect rows. Their captain knelt at the edge of the blue light, gauntlets on his knees, waiting for the sentence that would move him. The freighter was flagged at the gate, the captain said. As you predicted, the dock, the hour, the hood she wears. All of it. A test is only a test, Captain, if the subject believes he is failing it. Palpatine touched the screen with one finger, over the red circle. My apprentice feels her in that building the way you feel a splinter under your skin. I want to learn what he will do about it. Will he crush her? Will he hide her? Will he lie to me with a straight visor? The thin smile came and went. Every answer teaches me how to hold his leash. On his desk lay the uprising broadcast, typed and signed before any uprising existed. He had written it the same night he printed her name on the capture list at 2100 hours, 6 days before any ship docked. Choice was such a small thing, he thought. A door you open for people after you have built the hallway. The tower's medical feed blinked in the corner of the screen. The apprentice's heart rate, steady, 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 and one spike at 23:14, the exact minute her freighter touched the dock. Palpatine watched that spike the way a farmer watches rain. Take your 50 to the temple, he said. Do not announce yourselves to the 500 first. Do not take the hunt from the clones. You are there to watch the apprentice, not the fugitive. If he moves a wall for her, record it. If he lets a child pass, record it. If he tries to open the sky for them, you will stop him, and you will bring me his mask." The captain bowed. At the door he paused, because one question had a price, and he had decided to pay it. "And if the apprentice passes your test, my lord? If he burns them all as ordered, then I will have learned that too," Palpatine said, and turned his chair toward the window where the temple smoked against the night. "A dog that bites on command is useful. A dog that hesitates is a lesson. Go." The crimson file emptied the room in under a minute. Alone again, the Chancellor opened the small private folder under the ping and read his own one line. Tano, Ahsoka, priority capture. Somewhere in a basement, a fugitive was just now discovering that list and feeling afraid of the wrong thing. She would assume a friend had sold her. Let her. Fear of a friend is smaller than the truth. That no friend was ever involved. Only a hallway, built early, and a door. On the screen, the red circle pulsed once, as if the basement below had felt his eye. The captain bowed, and 50 crimson helmets turned toward the temple like one animal that had just been given a smell. The archives were empty except for the sound of his own breathing, and the toppled holobust of Master Dooku lay at his boots with its stone face cracked clean down the middle. Vader stood over it for a long moment. Of all the masters in this hall, the fugitive had knocked down that one. Some part of him wanted to laugh. The machine would not let him. Behind him, the captain's lens ring glowed its soft recording red. He could feel it the way you feel a finger pointed at your back. Everything he did now would climb a wire to the tower. So he did what the mask required. He tilted his head toward the balcony door where she had stood, and let his gauntlet rise, slow and theatrical, as if weighing the hunt. Inside, where no lens could reach, 19 seconds ran backward. A training balcony, years deep. A small Togruta girl with a wooden saber raised, shouting a challenge 2 sizes too big for her. His own laugh, young and unarmored, rolling across the hall. The smell of ozone and cut fruit. A porch in the Senate quarter, rain on the broad leaves. A hand closing over his where it rested on the rail, and a voice low and sure. "You feel things too much, Anakin. That is not a flaw. That is the whole point of you." The memory spiked hot. His gauntlet closed on nothing. The vocabulator smoothed the breath before it could escape, and the captain's lens recorded only stillness. 19 seconds. Then he was armor again. He turned to the captain. "The fugitive favors the North Tower. She will run the gantry when the sky gives her no better offer." He said it as a hunter reads a trail, and it was true, and it was also a map he was handing his enemy for free. "Seal the lower exits. Pull the 500 first off the vault levels. Let her believe the building is a cage." The Chancellor ordered containment, the captain said. "The Chancellor ordered results," Vader answered, and the flatness of it satisfied the lens. The truth he kept for the dark was simpler. He had sealed the north lifts an hour ago, and the children had read it as a trap. Above those lifts, the roof pad was already mined for a shuttle that had not yet come. A cage is also a wall. Walls face both ways. On the vault level's sensor grid, he had remarked 14 small heat signatures as maintenance droids, and the clone sweep had walked past them twice without seeing. No lens had recorded that. Some walls you move with your hands, some you move with paperwork. Alone at the rail a moment later, he keyed the temple's exterior grid on his private override, the gantry floodlights, the cordon lamps, the tower face spots, and set them to his hand, to cut when she needed the dark and burn when she did not. Alone at the rail, the apprentice set the gantry floodlights to his private override and waited for the moment she would need the dark. The diplomatic frigate hung in the opera lane with its running lights painted as a medical convoy, and Senator Bail Organa was losing the argument of his life. His pilot, a gray-haired Alderaanian named Cade, had just said no for the 3rd time. "The lane is watched, the pad is mined, and the anti-air wakes in 90 seconds. I will not fly a shuttle into that fire, Senator. I will not let you fly it either." Bail looked past the viewport at the temple's smoke and at the Senate dome gliding below, and thought of the 6 friends still inside that building who had once shared his table. He had spent his whole career surviving by being careful. Tonight, careful was the enemy. He keyed the traffic control band one last time. The controller's price had climbed from a favor to a fortune, a senatorial seal, a clean manifest, and Bail's own name spoken aloud on a recorded line, so the man could hold it like a knife if the night went wrong. Bail had given it without blinking. Names were cheap tonight. Lives were the only currency left. "I am not asking, Cade," Bail said. "The cipher call was answered in my office, on my line, with my voice. If that shuttle dies on the pad, the story dies with it, and the story is the only thing that will ever indict that tower." "I am flying." Cade opened his mouth, and a voice from the back of the bridge closed it. "He's not flying alone then." The man who stepped into the light wore borrowed armor with no markings and a beard gone gray at the chin. "Captain Rex." Bale's people had pulled him off a Mandalore debris field 2 days ago with half his company's names in his fist. He had not spoken much since. She walked me out of that fire, Rex said. I'm not waiting in a lane while she walks into a worse one. He held up 2 heavy blasters, already checked, the way old soldiers hold the only honest things left. You need a gunner who has shot at gunships before. I've shot at 1,000. Bale looked at Cade. Cade looked at the scope, and his face went very quiet. A new signature had just bloomed in the opera lane, a crimson gunship with no flight plan and no call sign, matching their descent. 90 seconds, Cade said softly. 1 pass. Claws hot, ramp fast, and the moment I call burn, you burn for the deck. Understood? Rex was already strapping into the shuttle's gun seat. Understood. On the traffic scope, the crimson gunship with no call sign slid into the lane directly above their shuttle, like a hand closing over a coin. CT 6116, call sign Kite, had the gantry overwatch angle, and when the burn order came his sight settled on a small gray robe 30 paces out, and his finger learned the weight of the trigger, 14 of them. He counted as they ran, the way you count anything small and fast in a fire. He had been told traitors. He had been told armed and dangerous. The smallest traitor was holding a bigger traitor's belt with both hands and running with eyes shut. His rifle drifted high. Not on purpose, he would tell himself later. A wind correction. A twitch. The bolts went wild and high and clipped sparks off the ceiling, exactly as the after-action report would say, and exactly as no report would ever explain. It was not a twitch. He knew what a Jedi healer's hands felt like, because one had set his broken arm on Geonosis and never asked for a single thing back. He knew what a Jedi voice sounded like, calling for a retreat, because one had died shouting it so troopers like him could live. The armor said traitor. The arm said something older. Then the floodlights died. All of them, at once. His and every unit on the tower face. And in the sudden dark, Kite heard his officer order fire into the smoke, to look busy, to keep the record clean. Around him, muzzles blossomed orange at nothing. Kite raised his rifle into the dark and fired at the sky, counting his own bolts so the barrel log would show an honest-looking number. When the coded pullback came, his squad fell back in perfect discipline, and Kite was last off the ledge. As he turned, the dark gave him one gift, a gap in the smoke and the small gray robe at the gantry rail, turning a face up toward his ledge. The child did not run. The child looked at him for 1 full second, the way you look at a person, and then was gone. Kite climbed into the gunship with his rifle across his chest. His barrel log said 40 bolts. His counter said 0. Somewhere in the cordon, an officer with a red cape had already begun pulling rifle logs from the gantry angle, walking the line, looking for the one weapon that had fired at the sky. When the after-action logs were checked, one rifle in the whole cordon would show 0 bolts on target, and a red-caped officer would begin walking the line to find its owner. The Senate quarter balcony smelled of night rain on warm stone, and Padme Amidala stood at the rail with a cup of tea that had gone cold an hour ago. Below her, the city ran its usual rivers of light, but the sky over the Temple district was wrong, a low orange glow, like a hearth seen from very far away. When the public speakers crackled on with the Chancellor's calm voice, she listened to exactly one sentence of it, and then she turned the speaker off with her thumb. "The Jedi have risen in armed rebellion," Sabe said from the balcony door, repeating the line as if tasting something rotten. "They are saying it on every channel. They are saying the masters fell by their own Padawans' hands." "Who is at the temple?" Padme asked. She did not turn around. "The 501st. Sabe stepped into the light with a datapad hugged to her chest like a shield. "And the new commander. The one in the black armor. The broadcasts do not say his name. They do not need to." Padme set the cold tea on the rail. Her hands were steady. Her voice was steady. Only the pause between her breaths gave her away. "Then the fire over the district is not a fire," she said. "It is a door closing. And everyone I have ever loved is on the wrong side of it." Sabe offered the datapad. "The Senate is locked until dawn. Watch lists are already circulating. Your name is on the 3rd page, Senator. We should seal the apartment. We should go to the lake house under the old cover." "No," Padme said. "We are going to open every door we have." She walked past her handmaiden into the apartment and started giving orders the way she once gave them on Geonosis, quick and low and exact. The East Dock, the one that was not on any harbor map. The 2 quiet ships with the medical registry and the clean fuel logs. The pantry stock moved aboard. The droids told to sleep. Sabe followed, writing, and twice she looked up at the woman she had served since she was a girl, and twice she said nothing, because some nights a servant's job is only to keep up. "If anyone comes out of that fire tonight," Padme said, "they will need a door that is not on any map." I am not going to be a senator tonight, Sabe. I am going to be a doc. A chime cut the room short. A coded burst. 3 hops through dead relays. The kind of message only 2 people in the galaxy still knew how to send her. She read it twice. 19 guests, she said softly. One of them an old friend. Keep the East Dock warm. Sabe heard the name leave her mouth before she could stop it. Ahsoka. The handmaiden's face did something complicated. She is alive? She was never where they said she was, Padme said. She is where the children are. She crossed to the back room, lifted the floor panel under the window seat, and brought up the footlocker Anakin had packed for her with his own hands months ago, laughing at her for worrying, and then packing it anyway because he worried worse. Inside, under the med kits and the ration bars, her fingers found the small holodisc taped beneath the lid, where only she would ever look. The holodisc lit the dark room with his young face, and the recording said the one sentence she had never let herself believe she would hear. If the war goes wrong, take the ship and do not wait for me, and if Ahsoka comes to you, trust her with everything. The shuttle from the temple smelled of smoke and hot metal, and Vader stood at its viewport until the burning tower shrank to a coal in the city's gray coat. A courier droid rolled up beside his boot and unfolded the hunt dossier with a click, 2 leads glowing on the small screen, and behind him, close enough to count his breaths, the Red Guard captain stood with his helmet under his arm. Lead 1, the captain read over his shoulder, in the tone of a man who had already decided. The cargo platform in the lower city. Cracked keel, cold engines, no bodies. Lead 2, a stolen medical freighter on an autocourse out of the lower city, flagged toward Mandalore space an hour ago. Vader looked at Lead 1 for a long second. No bodies. He said the 2 words aloud, flat, and heard them become a record. No bodies. No survivors. Case closed. Ash confirmed. The captain's stylus wrote it down exactly as he meant it to be written. The Emperor wants the hunt launched before dawn, the captain said. He asked me to remind you that a leash is only as good as the dog's next choice. Vader did not answer the threat. He was reading the freighter's flight profile a second time. An autocourse. No life signs on the scan. A ship flying exactly the way a guilty ship would fly if it wanted to be seen flying. Somewhere in the lower city, an old pilot with gray hair was spending his last decoy, and spending it well. He turned to the captain and made his choice with his whole posture. The mask tilting toward the freighter lead, the gauntlet closing the dossier on the platform. The fugitive runs, he said. Launch every wing you have into Mandalore space. Burn that freighter to its bolts and bring me the wreckage. And the platform? The platform is Ash, Vader said. Ash does not run. Close it. The captain bowed and carried the order up the chain, and the hunt leapt into the sky toward the wrong horizon. 50 crimson helmets and half the garrison chasing an empty ship across the stars. Alone at the viewport again, Vader let the city slide past below him, and for 1 second, no more, his eyes rested on the quiet lights of the Senate quarter, where a dock that was not on any map was warming its engines. The captain's stylus scratched behind him. Even the glance was being counted. The leash was watching the dog watch the sky. He knelt and gave the Emperor the one lead he knew was false, and kept the true one folded inside his chest like a blade he would need later. The East Dock was not a dock. It was a wound in the city's lower lip, a maintenance scar where fuel barges used to bleed their tanks before the war made everything secret. No harbor chart marked it. No traffic camera watched it. The only light came from a single loading lamp that Padme had switched on herself 10 minutes ago with hands that did not shake. The shuttle came in low and wrong, one engine trailing a braid of gray smoke, the landing gear screaming on the wet concrete. Bale killed the throttle and sat very still for 2 seconds, breathing like a man who had forgotten the shape of his own lungs. Then the ramp dropped, and the night air rushed in, smelling of rain and hydraulic fluid and the faint, sweet rot of the river. 14 younglings walked down that ramp in a line so quiet it had its own sound. Kel counted them aloud under his breath, the way Farron had taught him, touching each shoulder as it passed. Miri held Lyra's hand. Lyra's leku were still twitching, a small involuntary rhythm, like a heart beating outside the body. Bren came last. He carried his training saber in both hands, and he did not look at the sky. Ahsoka was the last soul off the ship. She stood at the bottom of the ramp with her hood still up and her white blades still warm on her belt, and she looked across the empty dock at the woman waiting under the single lamp. Padme did not run. She walked, steady, the way she walked into a Senate session where the vote was already lost and the speech still mattered. Sabe followed 3 steps behind with a medkit and a blanket and a face that had forgotten how to be neutral. They stopped 2 paces apart. The rain had started, thin and warm, the kind that smelled like the planet was trying to wash something off. "You're alive," Padme said. "Tonight," Ahsoka said. "Tonight I'm alive." Padme's eyes moved past her, counting the children, counting the wounded, counting Jorah's soot-black hands and Kel's shaking fingers, and the way every youngling stood slightly too close to the person in front of them, like a flock that had learned the sky had teeth. Then her gaze came back to Ahsoka's face, and something in it broke open, not with grief, but with the specific, terrible relief of a woman who had been holding a door open in the dark and had begun to believe no one was coming through. 19, Padme said softly. The message said 19. 19 walked out, Ahsoka said, and then, because the number had a hole in it that she could not let pass unmarked, one stayed at the door. His name was Farron. He was a knight. He was afraid, and then he was not. Padme closed her eyes for 1 second. When they opened, they were dry and already working. The ships are fueled, 2 of them, medical registry, clean logs, pre-filed flight plans for a humanitarian convoy heading to the mid-rim. Sebe has packed them for a 3-week run. Food, water, med supplies, 2 changes of clothes in 14 sizes. She paused. I did not know how many would be children, I guessed. Ahsoka looked at her. You guessed 14. I guessed all of them, Padme said. I packed for all of them, because the alternative was to pack for none. The triage happened in the cargo bay of the larger ship, because the rain was getting heavier and the children needed walls. Jorah set up a field station with the calm efficiency of a woman who had been stitching wounds since she was 19 and had decided, sometime in the last 3 hours, that she would keep doing it until the galaxy ran out of skin. Farron's burned arm had no owner now. She packed the salve away without comment. Bren sat on a supply crate with his knees pulled up and his training saber across his lap. He watched Jorah work. He watched Ahsoka talk to Padme in low voices by the ramp. He watched Lyra fall asleep against Miri's shoulder with her mouth open and her leku finally still. And he asked the question he had been carrying since the maintenance shaft, the one that tasted like metal. Is he still in there? Kel, who was wrapping a sprained wrist 2 crates over, looked up. Who? The man in the mask. Bren's voice was flat, the way children's voices go when they have used up their fear and only the architecture is left. She said his name. She said Anakin, and he stopped. The blade stopped. I saw it from the ramp. Kel did not answer for 3 seconds. He was 17. He had been a Padawan for 2 years. He had watched his master die in the first 10 minutes, and he had carried a 9-year-old through a vent shaft, and he was very tired in the specific way that makes the truth feel like the only thing light enough to carry. He stopped, Kel said carefully. That's what I saw. A man stops, a machine doesn't. But he let the guards come after us, Bren said. He stood there while the captain raised his fingers. He also cut the rifles, Kel said. He cut the rifles and not the men. You saw that. He could have taken heads. He took barrels. Bren turned the training saber over in his hands. The plastic grip was warm from his palms. My master told me that the Force doesn't take sides. It just holds the weight. He looked up at Kel with eyes too old for 9. I don't think the Force is holding his weight anymore. I think he's holding his own, and I don't think he can do it for long. Kel had no answer for that. He went back to his wrist. Bren went back to watching the rain fill the dock in thin silver lines. 3 levels up in the Senate Tower, in a room kept cold enough to make the breath visible, the Emperor watched a screen that showed him nothing. The decoy freighter was burning beautifully in the Mandalore approach vector. 50 crimson gunships, and half the Coruscant garrison had chased it for 40 minutes before the pilot, a ghost, a phantom, a medical autocourse with no hands on the stick, had triggered its self-destruct in a shower of white fire and scattered bolts. The wreckage was already being logged. The hunt report was being typed. Fugitive confirmed destroyed. No survivors. Case closed. Palpatine read the report twice. Then he opened the barrel logs from the temple cordon, because he had learned long ago that the interesting truths lived in the margins, in the numbers that did not add up, in the 1 rifle out of 400 that had fired at the sky. CT 6116, call sign Kite, 40 bolts logged, 0 on target. He set the datapad down on his desk with the gentleness of a man placing a chess piece. Captain, he said, without turning around. The Red Guard captain materialized from the wall shadow. My lord, one of your clones on the gantry fired 40 bolts into nothing. Find him. Do not arrest him. Do not terminate him. I want him watched. I want to know who taught him to aim high, and I want to know if anyone else in that cordon remembers what a Jedi healer's hands feel like. The thin smile. A leash is only as good as the dog's next choice. But a cordon is only as good as the one dog that hesitates. Find me the hesitation, Captain. It will tell me where the leash is fraying. The captain bowed. At the door he paused. And the apprentice, my lord? His report says the fugitive is Ash. His report says what I need it to say, Palpatine replied. For now, the question is not whether he lied. The question is whether he believed his own lie. A man who lies to me and knows he is lying is a tool. A man who lies to me and has started to believe the lie is a wound. And wounds, Captain, are how the light gets in. He turned back to the screen, where the wreckage of the empty freighter drifted in slow, burning spirals. Let him believe it. For now, the belief will hold until the next test, and there is always a next test. The captain left. The room was cold and quiet, and full of the soft hum of machines watching machines. Palpatine opened the medical feed one more time. The apprentice's heart rate, steady, steady, steady. No spike at the news of the fugitive's death, no grief, no relief, just the flat, patient rhythm of a man standing very still in a room full of glass, waiting to see which pane would crack first. The Emperor closed the feed and folded his hands. The next test was already being written. The rain had turned to a real storm by the time Padme led them through the dock's back corridor, past the sleeping droids and the sealed pantry crates, into the larger ship's common room. The space had been cleared of cargo. In its place, 19 bedrolls, a water recycler, a small med station, and a crate of ration bars in flavors chosen by someone who remembered that children hated the green ones. Ahsoka stood in the doorway and looked at the room, and for the first time in 6 hours her shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch. Not relief, not yet, but the specific, exhausted recognition that someone else had been thinking ahead while she had been thinking now, and that the world had not entirely become a thing she had to hold alone. You packed for all of them, she said again, quieter this time. Padme was checking the fuel lines on the second ship, her sleeves rolled up, her senator's braid half undone. She did not look up. I packed for the possibility of all of them. There is a difference. One is hope, the other is arithmetic. She tightened a coupling with a wrench and set it down. Bale's frigate will fly the decoy lane for 6 more hours. After that, the traffic logs will show a medical convoy heading to the mid-rim. 2 ships, clean registry. Nobody looks twice at a convoy carrying children. Where? Ahsoka asked. Padme finally turned. Her face was tired in the way that had nothing to do with sleep. Thule, the old separatist listening post. Bale's people converted it 3 months ago as a fallback. No garrison, no population, just walls and a roof and a long-range transmitter. She paused. It is not a home. It is a place where no one will come looking for you, long enough to breathe, long enough to decide what comes next. Ahsoka nodded. She turned to go back to the children, but Padme's hand caught her wrist. Light, not pulling, just holding, the way you hold a thread to see if it is still attached. Ahsoka, she stopped. The recording, Padme said. Her voice had changed. The senator was gone. The dock was gone. What was left was a woman standing in a cargo bay in the rain, asking a question she had been carrying for 2 years. He made a recording, months ago. He said if the war went wrong, if Ahsoka came to me, I should trust her with everything. She swallowed. He said your name like it was a door he was leaving unlocked, like he knew that if everything fell, you would be the one walking through the fire to find the pieces. Ahsoka was very still. The rain drummed on the hull above them. Is he? Padme started. He stopped, Ahsoka said. The words came out before she could shape them, raw and unedited. On the balcony, his blade stopped. His hand came up, not toward me, toward me. Like he was reaching for something he had dropped a long time ago and could not remember the shape of. She closed her eyes, and then the captain came up the stairs, and the moment broke, and he was armor again. But for one breath, Padme, one breath. Padme's hand tightened on her wrist, then released. She turned back to the fuel lines. One breath is not a rescue, she said, and her voice was steady, and her voice was a lie, and they both knew it. No, Ahsoka agreed. It's not a rescue, it's a crack, and cracks are where you start. In the common room, Jorah had finished her triage. 14 younglings, bruised and smoke-streaked and alive. 2 Padawans with training sabers and 1,000-yard stares. 1 healer with soot up to her elbows, and a grief she had sealed shut like a wound she would open later, alone, when no one needed her hands. She found Ahsoka in the corridor and pressed a stim patch into her palm. You have not eaten in 9 hours, Jorah said. You have not slept in longer. You are running on the force and stubbornness, and one of those is going to run out before the other. The children are asleep. Or pretending to be asleep, which at their age is close enough. Jorah crossed her arms. The boy, Bren, he has not cried. He has not screamed. He has been organized. He took a data pad from a trooper's belt in the middle of a massacre because he wanted to remember their faces. He is 9 years old, and he is building a file. Ahsoka looked down the corridor toward the common room, where Bren sat on his crate with his knees up, watching the other children sleep with the careful, exhausted attention of a sentry who had been told the war was over but did not believe it. He needs a master, Jorah said. Not a knight, not a healer. Someone who knows what it is to lose a master and keep walking. Someone who handed back a title and kept the blades. Ahsoka said nothing for a long time. The rain hammered the hull. Somewhere in the ship, a youngling coughed in her sleep, and Miri murmured something soft, and the sound of it was so small and ordinary and alive that Ahsoka had to press her tongue against the roof of her mouth to keep her face from doing something. "Not tonight," she said. "Tonight I get them to Thule. Tonight I count them onto the ship, and I count them off the ship, and I make sure the number is 19. She met Jorah's eyes. "Tomorrow I figure out what I am. Tonight I am only the door." Jorah nodded. She turned to go, then stopped. "The night, Farron." Before he sat down at that door, he looked at Bren. And then he looked away. "I saw," Ahsoka said. "He was trying to buy back something he had sold," Jorah said. "He did not get to keep it, but he got to pay for it. I need you to tell the boy that. Not tonight, but soon. Because right now Bren believes the last adult who had power over him was a man who sold him. And that belief is going to eat him alive if someone does not put a different ending in front of it." Ahsoka nodded. Jorah walked away. The corridor was quiet, except for the rain and the soft mechanical hum of a ship waiting to leave. Vader stood in the hangar bay of the Imperial Palace, and the Hunt fleet was launching around him in a storm of blue engine fire. 50 gunships, 200 fighters. A full garrison mobilized to chase a dead woman across an empty lane toward Mandalore. The noise was enormous. The noise was the point. Noise meant no one was listening to the silence underneath it. The captain stood at his elbow, helmet tucked under his arm, reading the launch manifest aloud. Every ship, every pilot, every vector. A record, complete and time-stamped, for the tower. Vader let the words wash over him and did not hear a single one. He was thinking about a drain gate near the south wall, small, rusted, sealed with a chain that had never been replaced. The kind of gate a youngling could slip through to buy sweet fruit from a street vendor who never asked questions. He had shown it to her when she was 14, laughing, because she had been stuck in a ventilation shaft for 20 minutes and he had had to pull her out by her montrals. She had found it. Of course she had found it. She remembered everything. The captain finished the manifest. "The Emperor requests a progress report at dawn, my lord." "He will have one," Vader said. His voice was flat. The vocabulator made it flatter. "The fugitive is Ash. The hunt is ceremonial. I will file the closure by midday." The captain bowed. He turned to leave. At the hangar door, he paused, because he was a man who collected information the way other men collected coins. And one question had been sitting in his teeth since the archives. "My lord." The scratches on the junction hall wall, 2 lines and a dot, at shoulder height. He did not turn around. The maintenance logs show no record of them. They were not there at the start of the sweep. They appeared between the first and second floor clears. Fresh, deliberate. Vader did not move. "The apprentice's entry pattern suggests he passed that junction twice," the captain continued, still facing the door. "Both times, the scratches were present. Both times, the sweep continued without incident. I mention it only for completeness of the record." He left. The hangar swallowed the sound of his boots, and the engine roar filled the space like water filling a cup. Vader stood alone in the blue fire. 2 lines and a dot. He had carved them on his starfighter's nose with a stolen maintenance tool the night before the second battle of Geonosis, because she had lost 9 sparring matches in a row and had refused to stop until she won one, and he had wanted to make her laugh. She had laughed. She had thrown a hydro spanner at him. He had caught it. The memory lasted 4 seconds. The machine smoothed it away. The heart rate monitor in his chest plate registered no change. He turned and walked toward his shuttle, and the Hunt fleet screamed into the sky behind him, chasing a ghost he had built for them with his own hands. At 0347 hours, in a maintenance closet 3 levels below the temple's main hall, Connecticut, 6116 sat on the floor with his helmet off and his rifle across his knees and listened to the buildings settle around him. The temple was empty now. The last of the bodies had been moved. The last of the smoke had been vented. The clone garrison had been redeployed to the Senate perimeter, and the 501st was standing down in the barracks, and the whole vast building was doing the thing empty buildings do. Ticking, cooling, forgetting. Kite did not forget. His barrel log said 40 bolts. His counter said 0. The discrepancy sat in his chest like a stone he had swallowed, and he knew, with the calm certainty of a man who has already decided how the story ends, that someone was coming to ask him about it. He pulled the small data chip from his breast pocket. 40 bolt signatures. All fired into open sky, all logged with perfect mechanical honesty. He turned the chip over in his fingers and thought about a Jedi healer on Geonosis, young, tired, setting his broken radius with steady hands and saying, "Hold still, soldier, this is going to hurt more than the blaster did." She had not asked his number. She had not asked his unit. She had set the bone and wrapped it and moved to the next trooper, because to her he had not been a number. He had been an arm. He put the chip back in his pocket. He put his helmet back on. He stood up and walked out of the closet and into the empty, ticking dark of a temple that had stopped being a temple, and he did not know where he was going, but he knew, with the same calm certainty, that he was not going back to the barracks. The stone in his chest had a direction now. It was pointing south, toward the drain gate, toward the street vendor who never asked questions, toward the idea, small and dangerous and new, that a number could walk out of a formation and become a name. Behind him, in the temple's lowest level, the sealed vault's shelf door stood open. The med bay was empty. 14 bedrolls had been stacked in a neat pile, and on the wall beside the door, scratched at shoulder height in fresh, deliberate marks, were 2 lines and a dot. The temple held its breath. The storm moved on, and in the lower city, on a dock that was not on any map, 2 ships warmed their engines in the rain, and 19 souls slept in a cargo bay, and the woman who was the door sat with her back against the hull and her white blades across her knees and did not close her eyes, because the night was not over yet, and the number had to be 19, and she would count them herself, one by one, until the sun came up and the counting could stop. The rain fell, the engines hummed, the city pretended to sleep. And somewhere in the tower, in a room kept cold enough to feel like winter, the Emperor opened a new file, typed a single line, and saved it under a name that had not been spoken aloud in that building for 20 years. Skywalker, Anakin, watch stata, ongoing. He closed the file. He folded his hands. He watched the temple smoke against the dawn. The next test was already being written. Dawn came gray and thin over Coruscant, and the 2 ships lifted off the east dock on a column of blue fire. And Padme watched them go from the rain-soaked concrete with her hands in her pockets and her senator's face back in place. And she did not wave, because waving was for people who believed in goodbyes, and she was not saying goodbye. She was saying, I will be here when you come back. And if you cannot come back, I will be here anyway. The dock would stay warm. The door would stay open. That was the whole of it. That was enough. The ships climbed into the gray and became 2 small bright points, and then they were gone, and the rain stopped, and the city woke up and turned on its news screens, and the Chancellor's calm face filled every one of them, and the word it spoke was peace, and the word it meant was obedience, and the word it buried was ash. But ash, as the night had known at the door, was not the end of the story. Ash was what came before the seed, and the seed was 19 souls in a cargo bay, heading for a listening post on a dead moon, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs and the training saber in a 9-year-old's fist, and the name of a man who had stopped his blade for 1 breath in the fire. 1 breath was not a rescue, but it was a crack, and cracks were where you started.